What is going on, everybody? Today, how do I say this? Actually, it is a special day, but it's also a part 2. But before I get into that, let me go ahead and play this intro music. What is up, explorers? Before this episode begins, I just wanted to remind you guys, if you haven't already, make sure you check the link in the description below. Take you directly to our Patreon if you would like to support. You could support us for the low cost of a caramel ice cap from Tim Hortons. That's it. So if you'd like to support, make sure you go ahead, go to the Patreon link in the description below, and enjoy the episode. Peace.
Perhaps your skills do extend a bit farther than basketball.
Yeah, sure. As I was saying, my name is Dante. We are Chez Dante. And today, we are doing a part 2. If you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and check the part 1. We are watching a video by another YouTube creator. It goes by the name of 𝓁 I believe. Let me pull it up because I actually forget. What's his name? 𝓁 KURIMEOAHAU. Go look him up on YouTube. Great creator, dropping some knowledge. Make sure you're part of Drop Nation. And if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button down below. Anyways, we are going to continue watching this video on Thoth the Trickster, origins of Hermetism, Christianity, and Islam, Hermes, Gabriel, 𝓁, and Atlantis. All right, so let's just hop right back into it. This is going to be a shorter episode, just because it's a part 2, and I do have somewhere to be. But anyways, let's just hop right back into it. We left off on etymology, and once again, etymology is just, I know I was going to get right into it, but etymology is just one of those things where everyone should look into it. Where do words come from? The breakdown. Why is this word an actual combination of 2 older words? Anyways, etymology, let's hop back into it.
Or 𝓟, as I was saying it before. I was saying it wrong, but it was 𝓟, right? So here we go. The word alchemy was borrowed from Old French, alchemia, alchemy, taken from medieval Latin, alchemia, and which is in turn borrowed from Arabic, alchemia. The Arabic word is borrowed from late Greek, 𝓟, chemia, with the agglutination of the Arabic definite article. This ancient Greek word was derived from the early Greek name for Egypt. Okay? Chemia, based on the Egyptian name for Egypt, Chem, black earth, as opposed to the red desert sand. So the medieval Latin form was influenced by Greek 𝓟meia, meaning mixture, and referring to pharmaceutical chemistry. So Thoth wrote in the Emerald Tablets that he went to the sons of Chem, right? So Chem means Egypt, and that's where you get chemistry or alchemy. Okay, let's keep going. The central figure in mythology of alchemy is Hermes Trismegistus, or thrice great Hermes. His name is derived from the god Thoth and his Greek counterpart Hermes. So these 3 people are the same entity, same person. Hermes and his caduceus, or serpent staff, were among alchemy's principal symbols. According to Clement of Alexandria, he wrote what were called the 42 books of Hermes, covering all fields of knowledge. The Hermetica of thrice great Hermes is generally understood to form the basis for Western alchemical philosophy and practice, called the Hermetic philosophy by its early practitioners. These writings were collected in the first centuries of the Common Era. So Thoth is Hermes, right? So let's read about Hermes. Hermes is an Olympian god in Greek religion and mythology, the son of Zeus and the Pleiad Maya, and the second youngest of the Olympian gods. Dionysus being the youngest. Hermes was the emissary and messenger of the gods. So, just like Thoth was secretary to Ra, if we remember, right? Thoth was secretary to Ra. He was like mediator between two worlds. So we're reading right now that Hermes as well is an emissary and messenger of the god. It says here Hermes was also the divine trickster, a divine trickster. We're gonna start seeing that word related to Thoth and Hermes as well, trickster, right? All right. And the god of boundaries and transgression of boundaries. So somebody who didn't follow rules or order, transgression of boundaries. All right, Hermes is Thoth, so it's the same person. The patron of herdsmen, thieves, graves, and heralds. He is described as moving freely between the worlds of the mortal and divine, and was the conductor of souls in the afterlife, just like Thoth. He was also viewed as the protector and patron of roads and travelers. Continuing with Hermes, it says the epithets of Hermes. Right here it says the Atlanteades. Hermes was also called Atlanteades because of his mother Maya was the daughter of Atlas. Alright, so who was also from Atlantis? Thoth, right? He said it himself, he came from Atlantis in the Emerald Tablets. Right, you see another correlation here. And it says Kriophoros, in ancient Greek called Kriophoros or Krophorus. The ram bearer is a figure that commemorates the solemn sacrifice of a ram. It becomes an epithet of Hermes, Hermes Kriophoros. So another interpretation or another depiction of Hermes, aka Thoth. Alright, remember this Kriophoros. We're going to see how important this is later. And it says here, Argi Fontis, Hermes epithet, meaning Argus slayer, recalls his slaying of the 100-eyed giant, Argus Panoptes, it says. And who was watching over the heifer nymph, in the sanctuary of Queen Hera, herself in Argos. Hermes placed a charm of Argus' eyes with the caduceus to cause the giant to sleep. After this he slew the giant. Argus' eyes were then put into the tail of the peacock. Okay, peacock, a symbol of the goddess Hera. So peacock, you start hearing about the peacock and another bird, right? And it continues, messenger and guide. And it says here, the chief office of the god was as messenger. So the chief office of the god was as messenger. Hermes, the messenger, is in fact only seen in this role for Zeus from within the pages of the Odyssey. Continuing with Hermes, in some myths he is a trickster, once again, and outwits other gods for his own satisfaction or for the sake of humankind. So he outwits other gods for his satisfaction. So he even transgresses against other gods or other fallen angels, right? His attributes and symbols include the Herma, the rooster, again another bird right there, the tortoise, satchel or pouch, winged sandals, and winged cap. His main symbol is the Greek kerikeon or Latin caduceus, which appears in a form of two snakes wrapped around a winged staff with carvings of other gods. In the Roman adaptation of the Greek pantheon, Hermes is identified with the Roman god Mercury. Alright, so you see, Hermes is Mercury, aka Thoth. Right, so there you start seeing that Thoth is playing important role.
Now, one thing, we're just going to pause it here for a second, but one thing that I do want to mention is one of the things about myths and these stories is sometimes you have to look at it as if, these characters like Mercury, Hermes, Thoth, right? Are they people or are they, divine patterns that we see, repeat themselves over and over and over again, right? So that's one thing to, think about. Like, yeah, it could be a person, but it could be the pattern of someone telling you a message or a message coming to you, some sort of inspiration, that leads you to make a change in your life, whatever it may be. But if it's true that these sort of divine patterns have been observed by multiple different cultures, right? So maybe it was observed by the ancient Egyptians, then the Greeks and Romans, that would possibly explain why it's shown that this person, right, character, if it is a person, could be a god, whatever it may be, is seen throughout all these times. Anyways, let's keep going.
Roles everywhere in all these civilizations. They're just changing his name. who, though inherited from the Etruscans, developed many similar characteristics, such as being a patron of commerce. Okay, so we got this other character, right? Hermes Trismegistus, or Gistus, but we're going in circles here. We know it's the same character, or it's the same person. So it says here, is purported author of the Hermetic Corpus, a series of sacred texts that are basis of Hermetism. And it says the name means thrice greatest Hermes, or 3 times great. Origin and identity, it says here about Hermes Trismegistus, may be a representation of the syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes and Egyptian god Thoth. Greek and Hellenistic Egypt recognized the equivalence of Hermes and Thoth. Consequently, the 2 gods were worshipped as one, in what had been the temple of Thoth in Chemnu, the temple of Thoth in Chemnu, which the Greeks called Hermopolis. It says here, the Hermetic literature among the Egyptians, which was concerned with conjuring spirits and animating statues, informed the oldest Hellenistic writings on Greco-Babylonian astrology and on the newly developed practice of alchemy. In parallel tradition, Hermetic philosophy rationalized and systematized religious cult practices and offered an adept a means of personal ascension from constraints of physical being. This later tradition has led to the confusion of Hermetism with Gnosticism, which was developing contemporaneously. As a divine source of wisdom, Hermes Trismegistus was credited with tens of thousands of highly esteemed writings, which were reputed to be of immense antiquity. Plato's Timaeus and Critias states that in the temple of 𝓁 and 𝓟 there were secret halls containing historical records which had been kept for 9,000 years. Clement of Alexandria was under the impression that the Egyptians had 42 sacred writings of Hermes, writings that
So here's another good point. Right here on the bottom of the video, it's showing that Plato said that there was 9,000 years between him and the time of Atlantis, right? So he's saying here that in Plato's Timaeus and Critias, which is like a dialogue, so it's like a story, but the story is a conversation between Timaeus and Critias, right? So basically in that story, hey explorers, Dante here. Just wanted to remind you guys, if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and click the Patreon link in the description below if you would like to support. You could support the Patreon for the low cost of a caramel ice cap from Tim Hortons. So if you like to support the message, the platform, the page, go ahead and click the description below. Back to the episode. Plato is saying that that in the temple of 𝓁 and 𝓟 there were secret halls containing historical records which had been kept for 9,000 years, right? So Plato is saying that there had been records that had been kept there for 9,000 years, right? So they had kept these records for 9,000 years, and then Plato found them, right? And Plato also states that, there are 9,000 years between the time of him and Atlantis. So is he saying that these these secret halls containing historical records come from Atlantis? I mean, Plato was one of the first people to write down the word or coin the term, whatever you want to call it, of Atlantis. So, who knows? Anyways, let's keep going.
Detailed the training of Egyptian priests. Siegfried Moritz has suggested in Egyptian religion the reference to Thoth's authorship is based on ancient tradition. The figure 42 probably stems from the number of Egyptian nomes and thus conveys the notion of completeness. The Neoplatonic writers took up Clement's 42 essential texts. Alright, so this Hermetic literature, very powerful stuff, man, and stuff that I don't really want to get into, but it says here it's about conjuring spirits and animating statues, and also says that it helped rationalize religious cult practices. So we're gonna start seeing how Thoth, Hermes, and all these things they were doing in Egypt, how it led to all these mystery schools, they say, secret societies, which were practicing these religious practices that Hermes and Thoth were teaching, right? From there, we're gonna have a strong correlation to the religions we see today. So it helped rationalize and systematize religious cult practices. Okay. So a little bit more about this Hermetic literature, right? It says here, the Hermetica is a category of papyri containing spells and initiatory induction procedures. The dialogue called the 𝓁, after the Greek god of healing, describes the art of imprisoning the souls of demons or angels in statues with the help of herbs, gems, and odors, so that the statue could speak and engage in prophecy. In other papyri, there are recipes for constructing such images and animating them, such as when images are to be fashioned hollow so as to enclose a magic name inscribed on a gold leaf. Okay, you seeing what this is, Hermetica? Are you reading this with me? And again, etymology online says here, Thoth, ancient Egyptian god of wisdom and magic, hieroglyphics, and the reckoning of time. From Latin, from Greek Thoth, from Egyptian 𝓁, usually represented as a human figure with the head of an ibis, by the Greeks assimilated to their Hermes. Okay, same person. Hermetic, 1630s, dealing with the occult science or alchemy. Occult science or alchemy. From Latin Hermeticus, from Greek Hermes, god of science and art, among other things, who was identified by Neoplatonists, mystics, and alchemists with the Egyptian god Thoth as Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great Hermes, who supposedly invented the process of making glass tube airtight, a process in alchemy using a secret seal, hence completely sealed. Secret societies, secret proceedings, Masons. Alright, so we're starting to see that these teachings of Thoth and Hermes are starting to become.
So let me pause it there again, because basically what he's saying here is that, you know, these ancient teachings were you know, basically taught in a way that it's secret, right? So only a select few were actually able to understand this knowledge or even be made aware of its existence, right? And as 𝓁 was just saying, like, this is where the hidden schools of, you know, Freemasonry come from, right? So even the Freemasons are derived from Hermeticism, which is derived from Thoth the trickster, which is derived from Atlantis, supposedly. But yeah, so just keep that in mind when you hear these, you know, occult hidden schools, secret societies, all these stuff. One of the things is, like, I think some of this information is so, you know, it would make sense. Like, if you had the information that contained how to make yourself immortal, it wouldn't be wise to just, you know, allow that into the public. So, yeah.
Worship, you know, there's, and only by a select few as well. So it's being held a secret, right, in these secret circles. So it says here, worship and cult. Prior to being known as Hermes, Frottingham thought the god to have existed as a snake god. Angelo 1997 thinks Hermes to be based on the Thoth archetype. The absorbing combining of the attributes of Hermes to Thoth developed after the time of Homer amongst Greek and Roman. Herodotus was the first to identify the Greek god with the Egyptian Hermopolis. Plutarch and Diodorus also, although Plato thought that the gods to be dissimilar. A cult was established in Greece in remote regions, likely making him a god of nature, farmers and shepherds. It is also possible that since the beginning he has been a deity with shamanic attributes linked to divination, reconciliation, magic, sacrifices, and initiation, and contact with other planes of existence, a role of mediator between the worlds of the visible and invisible. Okay, so initiation. Who does initiations in modern day? Secret circles. Now, so could these teachings, you know, possibly be the foundation of our religions of today? Christianity, Islam, and all the other ones that come out of those two main ones? So it says here, many Christian writers, including Lactantius, Augustine, Giordano Bruno, Marsilio Ficino, Campanella, and Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, considered Hermes Trismegistus to be a wise pagan prophet who foresaw the coming of Christianity. So they call him a wise pagan prophet. He was pagan, but they still calling him a prophet, and he was wise. And it says he foresaw the coming of Christianity. How are they relating that to him? Well, we're gonna see. They believed in a prisca theologia. They believed in the prisca theologia, the doctrine that a single true theology exists, which threads through all religions. It was given by God to man in antiquity, and passed through a series of prophets, which included Zoroaster and Plato. Zoroaster was another Jesus-type savior. In order to demonstrate the verity of the prisca theologia, Christians appropriated the Hermetic teachings for their own purposes. So what did the Christians do? In order to demonstrate the verity of the prisca theologia, Christians appropriated the Hermetic teachings for their own purposes. By this account, Hermes Trismegistus was.
So, as you're hearing here, right? The Christians appropriated the Hermetic teachings for their own purpose. Therefore, Christianity in itself is cultural appropriation. According to the Christians themselves, because they said they took it from Hermes, who's Thoth, who is ancient Egyptian, who is Atlantean, who could be, ancient African, whoever it may be. But it says right here, these ancient Christian writers said that Christians appropriated the Hermetic teachings for their own purposes. Let's keep going.
Was either a contemporary of Moses or the third in line of men named Hermes, Enoch, Noah, and the Egyptian priest who is known to us as Hermes Trismegistus, on account of being the greatest priest, philosopher, and king. So it's very important here, as you can see, that Christianity, or they're telling us here, they appropriated the Hermetic teachings for their own purposes. So why is it telling us that? We're going to see. Islamic tradition. Sayyid Ahmed Amiruddin has pointed out that Hermes Trismegistus has a major place in Islamic tradition. He writes, Hermes Trismegistus is mentioned in the Quran in verse 19:56-57, mentioned in the book Idris that he was truthful, a prophet. We took him up to a high place. The Jabirian corpus contains the oldest documented source for the Emerald Tablet, or Hermes Trismegistus, translated by Jabir ibn Hayden Gerber for the Hashemite Caliph, or Baghdad Harun al-Rashid, the Abbasid. Alright, so what did it just tell us, man? I mean, listen to what it's telling us here, man. It's telling that Hermes Trismegistus is mentioned in the Quran, okay? And it says that Idris, one of their prophets, and we're going to show you who Idris is later on. You're going to see how it links to Hermes and Thoth. He says that he was truthful, a prophet, and we took him up to a high place. So why is the Quran saying Hermes, this occult science, spirit conjuring magician? Why are they calling him a prophet? Okay, what do you think all this stuff for genies and the flying carpets and all that come out of in this region of the Middle East? You see, it's Thoth and Hermes teachings. Now let's keep reading. It says Jabir ibn Hayyan al-Ashite, identified as Jabir al-Sufi, was a student of Jafar al-Sadiq, Hussein ibn Ali's great-grandson. Thus, for the Abbasids and the Alids, the writings of Hermes Trismegistus were considered sacred, as an inheritance from the al-Bayt. These writings were recorded by the Ikhwan al-Safa and subsequently translated from Arabic into Persian, Turkish, then Hebrew, Russian, and English. In these writings, Hermes Trismegistus is identified as Idris, Idris, the infallible prophet who traveled to outer space from Egypt and to heaven, whence he brought back Adam and the black stone when he landed on earth in India. So, because the ancient earth was all called the three Indias, right? The three Indias. So the black stone, Kaaba, right? The Kaaba has the black stone they're talking about in Mecca. So again, we can see some kind of hermetic foundation with Christianity and Islam. We're gonna go in depth into this with both religions later on. Again, here it goes. Hermetism, also called Hermetism, is a religious, philosophical, and esoteric tradition based on primarily upon writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great. These writings have greatly influenced the Western esoteric tradition and were considered to be of great importance during both the Renaissance and the Reformation. Okay, you hearing this? Very important. The tradition claims descent from Prisca Theologia, a doctrine that affirms the existence of a single true theology that is present in all religions and that was given by God to man in antiquity. It's present in all religions. Okay, you seeing what I'm trying to tell you here, right? Because we're about to dive in deep. We're about to take it to another level right now, all right? So I hope you're ready, and I'm glad you're still here after an hour. All right, so before
All right, so we're going to pause it here right at the recap. We're going to call this the end of part 2 of this video, the Thoth, the trickster oranges of Hermetism, Christianity and Islam, Hermes, Gabriel, and 𝓁 Atlantis by 𝓁. All right. If you guys enjoyed this part 2, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. If you've heard of these sort of ideas beforehand, where you heard them, and what your thoughts are on them. And, leave a like, and because that helps us in the algorithm. And make sure you share this with a friend. That also helps us in the algorithm. We want to spread this message or the platform as big as we can. We want to grow it as big as we can. But until the next time, let me go ahead and play the outro music.
Further.
I'm sorry?
You said my skills extend farther than the basketball court. Farther relates to distance. Further is a definition of degree. You should have said further.
What's up, explorers? Hope you enjoyed the episode. Just a reminder, once again, if you haven't already, go ahead and check the link in the description below to join our Patreon. There you'll find exclusive behind-the-scenes content that's not for the YouTube, just for the Patreon, just for those that want to go that next step further and support the page. So yeah, go ahead and check it out. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, leave a comment. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would like to see, if you have any topics. But topics is for the Patreon members only. So go ahead and check out the Patreon. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Later. Peace.